Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reacts where today we have ourselves some tracks from an act named Billy Chuck the Goat. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the first track of these three on the screen titled Parked My Car in Her Driveway. We're going to listen through each of these from start till finish and we're going to hear what we think. Got it up here on their YouTube channel. They also have a Spotify, links in the description, but let's go, let's do it.
Follow behind, sweet home Carolina. I parked my car in her driveway. She opened the door. Once I got off the highway, I called and she ain't ignored. I showed her why, I told her my package ain't come from the store. I parked my car in her driveway, put my boots on her floor. Later on when we driving, her car's right in front of mine. A glass of wine. Then she cut to the chase and said she wanna know how it tastes. I guess it's that place and time, sweet home Carolina. I parked my car in her driveway. She opened the door. Once I got off the highway, I called and she ain't ignored. I showed her why, I told her my package ain't come from the store. I parked my car in her driveway, put my boots on her floor. Sweet home.
I used to call them responses to that.
You know I never let a woman steal me away from you. She's got me shaking in my boots. Claim she's all about it. Temptation, I can't hold it back. When I'm out late, that's when you know not to wait up for me. And in the morning I'll be back, but I got distracted. I parked my car in her driveway. She opened the door. Once I got off the highway, I called and she ain't ignored. I showed her why, I told her my package ain't come from the store. I parked my car in her driveway, put my boots on her floor. I parked my car in her driveway Friday. Once I got off the highway.
And Gray used to fade out at the end. There was very few spaces there to really pause and talk about it, so I decided to let it flow. We're going to talk about this track more in a moment, I suppose, you know. So we got Parked My Car in Her Driveway, track number 1 for today. What do we think this is about? I think that it's about someone who has gone to a bar, gotten interested in someone, started vibing with them, and they've gone home to their house. They parked their car in the driveway, taken their boots off, and you know, gone down to business, and they're back the next day, but the temptation was too strong, you know. I'm not sure if that's inferring that there was already someone else that they were with, or whether they just simply, they weren't necessarily intending to go back to their place, but either way, I think it's I like how it's structured. It's really satisfying to have like an act 1, an act 2, and act 3, like different verses going between those choruses. Like, I know that it's like, should be a given that we structure tracks that way, especially these kind of poppy pieces, but you can't always kind of predict that or kind of assume that. Sometimes the phrasing of events is a little bit awkward, but we had that first part we sort of started with, again, the bar. The second part, we went back to the house, and the third part, we're kind of discussing what they learned of the overall experience and what happened afterwards. And the fact that it just went back really seamlessly into that catchy hook line with the call and response to the vocals, the main line, as well as the extra parts going sideways in the stereo field, was just a really interesting production decision. But it retains your attention because it constantly moves and you're like, oh, it's going backwards and forwards. What's it doing as a listener? And you kind of also, like, the way it's told is really accessible as well. It's not too kind of like, it's not trying to hold you by the nose or throw stuff at you. You just either groove along to the track passively or you try and pay closer attention. Either way, it's enjoyable. But yeah, the structuring is fantastic. Great use of the 3 minutes in this piece. It just flew by. I don't think we needed to add anything more compositionally to it to kind of like spice it up. I feel like it was great with the focal point as a concept. I also appreciate the confidence and the quiet charisma of Billy Chuck the Goat on the mic there. They're very comfortable singing these lines, having themselves kind of pop back to each other. And they work neatly into the backing arrangement there in a way which is just really satisfying to listen to. It's got a great sort of groove to it and it works rhythmically well with some of the drum and kind of like picked or string elements. And there's a bit of vocal fry sometimes just to change the expression or sort of tone or texture of the voice there. And there's like a phaser on the voice as well. And again, there's a panning, the way that it kind of goes back and forth around the stereo field there, which is really interesting. And I think it's also that we have a similar kind of cadence to some of our verse parts as well. That's just very satisfying. You kind of know what you're going into. You can kind of roll along to it and not have to think too much about it. I think it's also the combination of the drums, the 808 or the bass, and the guitars, the steel strings there. I like the use of the hammer-ons, pull-offs, and kind of slidey bits on the guitars. That there's just sort of bright arpeggios and chord progressions that add a nice sort of charm and shimmer to it and keep it sounding reasonably upbeat. We don't overcomplicate the harmonies either. The 808 or the bass on the low end, I'm just not sure whether it's like a bass guitar or an 808. I'd have to listen back to it, but it's just nice and sort of like it's smooth in the low end, and it doesn't try to sort of interact with the guitars too much, aside from sort of respecting the root notes or main sort of notes of those chord progressions. I like the sound of the drums. I mean the hi-hats, kicks, and snares that we have there, sort of more sort of like a kind of a trappish kind of hip-hop kind of tone to it. But I think that works well alongside the country stylings of the guitars, and I think that that's kind of like a marriage that we have at the moment with these different genres, which is just really fascinating to me, sincerely. It's really cool. And yeah, honestly, just a really well-rounded track instrumentally with a compelling vocal performance and a great sort of like well-thought-out structure to it. So what do we got next? Well, we have Hold On To Your Britches, track number 2. I think that would be electric bass that time.
You got some things to figure out. I say when life throw you some lemons, you squeeze them jokers on some trout, then keep it moving like the river. Another day, another bout. Somebody out here trying to get it. You so eager to sway the doubt. How about you hold on to your britches? Lord, you are my witness. Everything I did and anything I didn't, it just what it is and it isn't what it isn't. Tried to mind my business, said this is your love, then why you not committed? Got so much charisma, talented and gifted, just need a little wisdom. Repeating the same won't get you nothing different. Caught up in the trenches, always so defensive. Trying to give you game, just don't be so dismissive. Shoulders carry chips, so grit is not the issue. Every day you pray, but say you not religious. Claim between them scriptures, major contradiction. Think outside the fences, been caged from the beginning. I say when life throw you some lemons, you squeeze them jokers on some trout, then keep it moving like the river. Another day, another bout. Somebody out here trying to get it. You so eager to sway the doubt. How about you hold on to your britches? I had some things to figure out off my mother's couch. I couldn't wait to bounce. Ambitious and proud, but I had way too much doubt. See, the devil keep on trying to break into my house, but this ain't no cat and mouse. You see, my heart is stout, and life gave me some lemons, so I I reeled me in some trout. I'll scale them jokers up and grill them. Settle down. Not gon' sit around and pout. I'm just gon' hold on to my britches. You see, I learned to go without when I moved away from mama's kitchen. You got some things to figure out. I say when life throw you some lemons, you squeeze them jokers on some trout. Then keep it moving like the river. Another day, another bout. Somebody out here trying to get it. You so eager to sway the doubt. How about you hold on to your britches? Settle down.
Okay, an instrumental outro, I suppose. I do like those natural harmonics they've got, as well as the slide guitar parts and the backing motif. I do really dig that. No, there are some really cool musical ideas with this one. I appreciate it. So Hold On to Your Britches, I think, is less of a fun one than the previous track. It's a song where we're specifically talking about the need to kind of be able to steer ourselves and remain sort of stoic in the face of adversity. They talk about other people and themselves and how they've kind of needed to keep going. And like when you know, life gives you lemons, you put them on the track and keep flowing like the river. You know, they talk about how the devil was trying to get into their house and stuff like that. And I think it's effectively, yeah, as I've said, I like that that's an accessible story for people. I think that people will be able to relate to Parked My Car in a Driveway as well to a certain extent. But this one, I think everybody can kind of take a lesson from. So in terms of things that I think were done well here, one of them is I feel like it's just, again, the vocal layering, the constant kind of, there's like noises or words or kind of one shots. And then we have the settle down with like a vocal effect that makes it a bit more sort of like it's in the background, like kind of a phasing or kind of chorus effect. And then his main vocals in the center are less affected, which gives him a bit more sort of like body and presence in the mix. And I just like the contrast both in textures and tones of those different vocal layers combined with the way they're kind of spread around the stereo field on the sides of the headphones. And just that, again, we're not taking the listener's attention for granted. We're trying to sort of hold their attention and retain it. I think also the minor leaning of the guitar parts with the heaviness of the 808s kind of weighing us down makes sense. I think it balanced itself out sort of tonally to an equilibrium with the use of the natural harmonics, a little sort of chimey sounds on the guitar, as long as it slides, retaining sort of like country aesthetic, but also just sounding kind of charming and sort of wistful, like kind of like along like the open desert, you know, going alone on the highway, you know, doing what you can to get by. I potentially would have liked to have had an additional lead layer over top of that chorus just to add a little bit more sort of like spice to it, a little bit kind of extra kind of zazz to it. Like again, with the guitar lines, we could have added like another guitar line or adjusted the kind of chord progression or sort of like part that was doing. But it's okay if we want to sort of have it more sort of traditional. A lot of music within the genre that I've heard typically kind of keeps it relatively sort of like chill with the kind of structuring and phrasing of things throughout the chorus sections, just to sort of focus on the catchiness of it. So that's totally fine. I think in general, just the studio production as well as a final note, there's a great sort of like attention to detail with what's going on with, again, the guitar takes, the 808s, the basses and the low end there, the body that they have and the sub bass presence there without being overwhelming, as well as the use of those kind of triplet sort of hi-hats, kicks and click and kind of snare patterns. I like how they're balanced and leveled within the piece. It can be difficult to get sort of accurate read on that, but the fact that they're sounding commercial grade insinuates to me that Billy Chuck the Goat's probably got like a lot of potential here. I think that we're covering our bases really well. I've got no complaints about this one, just with the extra lead layer on in. It's just kind of me being greedy as a music reviewer, but otherwise very, very good. And then finally, we have Left Side of the Road.
This is not the way that things are supposed to go. My wheels keep on spinning, but they slow. Every day is getting harder for me to trust my food. Things ain't always better on the left side of the road. This is not the way that things are supposed to go. My wheels keep on spinning. to the last. With the ball against my back, I turn a Billy to spaz. Time I do not have, so nobody gets a pass. Pockets full of cash, fuck a drip, I made it splash. Some things I'll always have, that's the thing about my past. Shorty wanna play, so I gave her what she wanted. Come to find out, I done made her lose control. Now she on my nerve, cause she filled with these emotions. Things ain't always better on the left side of the road. This is not the way that things are supposed to go. My wheels keep on spinning, but they slow. Every day is getting harder for me to trust my foes. Things ain't always better on the left side of the road. This is not the way that things are supposed to go. My wheels keep on spinning, but they slow. Every day is getting harder for me to trust my foes. Things ain't always better on the left side of the road. That's like suicide on the left side of the road. Just like you and I, opposites oppose. I just do or die, I'm not on a road. Try to keep the heat alive, every time it's cold. Never take a dive, I will never fold. Got way too much pride, even when it snow. I can make a chicken fry, I can make a chicken fly. Get them out the mud and give them bitches life. I see through the lies, in between the lines. Sorry to surprise, been here way too many times. You and all them flies do whatever to survive. I just gotta try being more than you and I. This is not the way that things
I like the vocal chops in the background as well.
my wheels keep on spinning, but they slow. Every day is getting harder for me to trust my foes. Things ain't always better on the left side of the road. This is not the way that things are supposed to go. My wheels keep on spinning, but they slow. Every day is getting harder for me to trust my foes. Things ain't always better on the left side of the road.
That flew by so quickly, dude. Yeah, that's really good. Like the fundamentals are adhered to. A lot of stuff's really positive. Like clearly the story isn't positive, but like a lot of the fundamentals of the actual way it was produced, written, and performed are really, really solid. You know, I'm really happy with this one. So that was Left Side of the Road. Now, I think Left Side of the Road is about someone just kind of just struggling to make headway. The wheels are turning. You know, they can't. They just can't get the hang of it. You know, they've got issues maybe with the people around them, with things in their own life internally. And they would like to maybe get out of that left side of the road, but they kind of feel like they're stuck there potentially. That's another story that I feel is going to be accessible to an audience. And I feel like a lot of people are stuck on the left side of the road. Incidentally, I think in the States, because I don't live in the States, I think the left side of the road is the way that the cars come at you. Right, if you're driving, you're going to have a head-on collision if you're on that side of the road, because you usually drive on the right side. So I think that also might be a part of it, if I'm not mistaken, you know. So I do hope sincerely, before going any further, that if Billy Chuck the Goat is going through this, you know, like that, I hope that they can find a place that they're happier, you know. It sucks when you're struggling. I think that, you know, outside of the positive comments I made across the other tracks we've heard so far, there are some personal highlights for me within this piece that kind of carry on. Like, again, like the proficiency of the vocals is really great. Here, we're clearly comfortable on the microphone. I also like the vocal chops. So the higher pitched ones, they're just a nice sort of extra layer on top of what Billy Chuck is doing. It's great to have that frequency spectrum explored, and maybe to go a bit wider in the stereo field as well. You know, to kind of like make it kind of flatten out a little bit. And we have the sort of the phase to kind of like modulated vocals and like the main ones in the take. There's just so much attention to detail there. There's no issues whatsoever with the processing. It's very, very good. And there's a nice sort of, again, the repeater, the cadence, the rhythms of it. This is very satisfying. We understand how to make a well-made sort of track within the genre. No complaints there. I think also when we made the splash, there was like a bit of Foley there or something like that. I just like the fact that we're using the sounds of things in the track to sort of further help the listener to imagine what we're discussing. I think that's just a really sensible idea. And it just, as a reviewer, it's just a no-brainer to add that kind of Foley or sound effects or sounds, samples, you know, just to kind of make do the world building there. I think the final thing I'll mention today, just before going to the overall conclusion, is the use of sublayers. So I think in this one, we had some vocal takes that are a bit quieter than the main ones. We had like an underlying kind of lo-fi-ish, kind of like guitar arpeggiated part there that had some also flamenco or classical stylings, or leanings to it. Some extensions in the harmonies there that made it sound a bit more sort of sophisticated. And I think that's great. I appreciate when people put those kind of complicated guitar lines in because it allows us, if we're a bit less melodic with our vocal style, even though there were melodies that were repeated throughout here by Billy Chuck, it's just having that extra bit of coloration through those sort of extensions just adds a bit of kind of refinement to a piece. And especially when you've got a kind of a drum beat that's a bit more sort of like and safe and steady, despite the complexity to it. I liked the variety of different sort of like kicks there and higher patterns there. It's a staple for the genre in certain respects. It's just a combination of elements here with not everything being the same loudness that gave it a sense of dimensionality that I appreciate. But we're going to talk about these tracks more in the conclusion. And so welcome to the conclusion, my review of these tracks from an act named Billy Chuck the Goat, these three songs being Parked My Car in Her Driveway, as well as Hold On to Your Britches and Left Side of the Road. Now, I've talked about these tracks within their own sort of mini conclusions. This section is more sort of my overall thoughts on these songs, where I give sort of like my sort of, I suppose, favorite parts of them overall, as well as any sort of applicable constructive critique. And then finally, my general sort of like thoughts as a listener, from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think these tracks are about? So I think these tracks are about their experiences with women and temptation, as well as their life, kind of like looking at how you kind of have to remain stoic and continue to move forward despite adversity. But I think also Left Side of the Road acknowledging that they also are struggling a bit and they're just trying to figure out why that is. So it's not just that we have to try and move forward and be strong, it's also accepting that it's possible to be being strong but being stuck. So I like that we're covering different layers there and sort of showing a bit of vulnerability without it being too much or sort of oversharing. I think that it's good to be authentic as a musician, but there's like a fine line between, opening yourself up a bit and then completely sort of like overexposing and dumping your problems onto the listener. I think that there are a few highlights overall with these in terms of general comments. I think the first is that the vocals are really tight throughout. There was never a moment where I listened to Billy Chuck and thought, why is he doing this? We were very comfortable with our flow, whether we're doing sung or kind of like clean rapping or like melodic rapping or rapping in general. Like we were comfortable with our main parts as well as the call and responses on the sides there, our vocal chops, our sort of like one shots or overdubs. We had like vocal effects chains on the vocals to kind of make them go backwards and forwards as well as the mains, and we had sub layers as well as sort of mains. The attention to detail there was much appreciated, and I think honestly it's very impressive, especially for first impressions. I'm really happy with the vocal side of things. He seemed authentic, well in control and comfortable, and the expression made sense considering the subject matter, again, without it being too much. I think I also liked the flavor combination of the various guitar, bass, and drum parts. I think albeit Parked My Car in a Driveway and Hold On to Your Britches more sort of like country hip-hop kind of fused oriented. I think the Left Side of the Road might have been sort of more sort of traditional kind of lo-fi or hip-hop. I'm not sure, I'm not very good with the subgenres, but effectively I think regardless of where we had our guitars, whether they're arpeggiated or natural harmonics or like, hammer-ons or pull-offs or slidey parts or more sort of like finger style or kind of classical sort of flamenco style parts in Left Side of the Road, we typically had the correct sort of like idea, I think, for whether we wanted a major or a minor oriented key piece, and we used the strengths of the instruments involved to elevate the track or to set the scene in a way that made sense with the vocal takes. I feel like the use of basses as well was really tight. We were using either like electric basses or 808s, and there was never a moment where like it was kind of alien or foreign in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with it. I think it was cool to have like them follow the root note to not overcomplicate things. And typically the drums, we're mostly working with the kicks, the snares, and the hi-hats, maybe some crashes occasionally or clicks, but ultimately I think it's not trying to overcomplicate things, especially when you've got the vocals at the focal point and there's enough going on with the variation to an extent of the guitar parts to allow that instrumental sort of like variety as well. We had a groove, a pace, a focus on the rhythm, and some of the vocal parts were sort of like very sort of cognizant of that and kind of had a sense of rhythmic unison with that, and same could be said with the bass with it. So there were some really kind of nice tight sections that were very satisfying to listen to. And I think in general, instrumentally made sense. And then finally, it's just the studio production, the recording, mixing, and mastering, where that too I was very happy with. It just sounds like at this point I'm happy with everything, and honestly I am. I'll talk about, like, again, I'll just iterate upon the lead layer thing at the end, just very quickly at the end, but honestly it's a very positive review. I think in general the quality of the vocal production, the way it's EQ'd, sort of like filtered any sort of additional effects on outside of the main ones, the call and response, etc., are well done. The guitar parts typically had a nice sort of like tone that made sense with the styling that we were going for. They were EQ'd effectively and well present within the mix without being too much. And I think the bass and the drums as well were nicely sort of niched within the frequency spectrum and the stereo field in a way where it surrounded you in the headphones. There was also good use of foley. There was like a splashing sound at one point, and the sub layering was good because it didn't have everything the same loudness, and that effectively created a sense of dynamic range, which made it more interesting to listen to, because when everything's the same volume, it's just a bit tiring. It's a bit too much depending on the genre and how you want to sort of vibe with it as a listener. It was nice and loud without pumping, so the bus compression and limiting was handled. And so I feel that overall, these 3 tracks are strong. They're different, showing different sides of Billy Chuck the Goat, but I think they're effective and that the approach was well worth it. In terms of constructive critique, this isn't really a critique as much as just, again, a suggestion. As I mentioned with Hold On To Your Britches, I think it was, I feel like there was just room on that last chorus to add an additional lead line with like a guitar part or something like that, just to add a sense of further diversity or to kind of further elevate it. But again, I also understand that stylistically we might have just simply wanted to have kept things simple. With that last take, we were comfortable with the hook, and that's totally fine. It's totally fine. So I think that's me being transparent as a reviewer. And from a general sort of like listener's perspective, I am really happy with this. I do think that Billy Chuck the Goat deserves more attention. So if you've listened through this today and enjoyed it, I don't always say this. Just to preface, I don't always say this. I'm not going to pretend that every person I listen to, I think everyone else should listen to more. But I listen to Billy Chuck the Goat, and I think that just they make great music. And so if you enjoyed it, please do go show them some love via their various social medias. I'm going to say it at the end anyways, but yeah, awesome. Really great first impression and a positive review. So thank you very much for watching my review of these tracks from an act named Billy Chuck the Goat, these being Parked My Car in Her Driveway, as well as Hold On To Your Britches and Left Side of the Road. And hopefully you enjoyed them. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias, as well as their YouTube and Spotify pages, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I will catch you in the next SB Reacts. Spiderhands out.